What is up, everyone? Back with another video. I'm gonna do something a little different today. I'm going to show you how I go about dialing in tones using, I'm working on the outfield, which was a request from a friend of mine. You know who you are. Yeah. Anyway, we share a love of the 80s, all thing 80s, and clean guitar and Tylers and all that good stuff. So he suggested I do the outfield, Your Love, and I thought,
that's a good one.
So I'm doing it, and so I'm going to go over several things that enable me to kind of get as close as I can get without getting super anal retentive about everything. But I'm going to explain how I go about doing that and the programs that I'm using and all of that. So if you will look on the screen here, I'm showing, so I have a Logic project that I've got a bunch of stems from a ton of songs that was wanting to kind of do artist presets for, and so I just kind of have a running project. It's called The Fix and the Foo Fighters right now, but because that's just the two that I started with, and then I found a bunch of stems and I added those in, and now I'm working on this one. So ignore over here what it's called. This is the track for Your Love, Outfield. So this is the main track right here. And the way that you do this in Logic, you need a couple things. So I open up my music. I look for the song that I want to do. Outfield, Your Love. Comes up. And so I've got it ready to go. One thing that you need to do is record this into Logic onto a track if you don't have the WAV file of the song. So the best way that I found to do that is there's a program, Loopback Audio. And essentially what you do is you set up a virtual device. And I've got several versions. And so this one I'm actually, I'm not going to go through how to use this, but this is how I do it. But there's all kinds of tutorials on how to use Loopback, but you need this to be able to feed the audio from the music, Apple Music, into Logic. And then when you go into Logic, you go to your settings, audio, you set your input source, in my case it's Quad Cortex, and then the output device is the Loopback Audio. And that's how I'm referencing it on my monitors. So I recorded that to a track here, which you can see. And then all you do after that, you right click on it in Logic and go to Stem Splitter. And it pulls up a list of what you want to separate it into. So you want just vocals, you would just check that. And it'll just strip out the vocal track. Drums, in this case I want the whole thing. I select everything, click apply, and it automatically creates new tracks, as you can see here. If I had named this track before I did the split, all the splits would have, well, I'll show you. I'll do it, I'll go ahead and do it. Actually, I'm not going to, because then I'm gonna have to redo a bunch of other stuff that I'm gonna show you. So anyway. So you right click on that and do stems, and it splits out into vocals, drums, bass, guitar, piano, and then other is a category if it doesn't know where to put it. It splits it out into other. So once you get all your stems, then you're able to play them. So you could play the whole song.
Josie's on a vacation far away.
Right? If I just wanted to hear the vocal.
Come around and talk it over. So many.
In this case, when I'm starting to build a preset, I isolate the guitar And that's all that I listen to when I'm putting my blocks together and figuring out what amps I want to use and cabs and EQ. You know, I try to get the EQ as close as I can before my next step, which is what I'm going to show you next. All right, so what I do, once I get it to where I think it's, you know, at least somewhat in the ballpark, is I will record. So I will record that to a track, and I did that down here. So this is the track that I recorded. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just enough to be able to get a reference to do a match EQ against the original. So what I wound up with was this. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna select the first step is after you've recorded your first run. You're going to go to your plugins, you're going to add a match EQ, you're going to click stereo. Alright, so then in this dialog you've got a current, a reference, and an EQ curve. The current is what you just recorded, so that's your track. The reference is what you're trying to match your track to, and then when you click EQ curve and you click this little match, it'll analyze your current against the reference and it'll build an EQ curve to match your current to the reference. And then I'll show you what you do after that. So first thing you do is you're gonna drag the your track that you just recorded, and it's gonna have like a little plus sign there, and drop it. Builds your little EQ curve there. All right, now do the same thing with your reference track. So grab the stem, go to the stem track. All right, click and drag it onto the reference. And then you click EQ curve. And then what you get, and I'll show you. And when you click EQ curve, this is the one that I did originally, okay? So what you get is this EQ curve. So if you play this back, if you were to play this back against the original track, you'll see that it matches really closely. So once I have my EQ match, I'll need to decide what type of parametric EQ I need to plug into my preset. Now, I could go into the amp and I could say, all right, I need to boost a lot of mids and do that. It's only going to make a little bit of difference. So the quickest way to do it is the way I'm going to show you. So I'll count the main peaks that I can adjust. And since I know I've got an 8-band EQ, and if there's a ton, you could get really surgical with it and you could add multiple EQs to deal with every single peak and really fine tune it. But I'm just going to show you kind of an overview of kind of how this works. So I'm going to do this one for sure because it's pretty significant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll count this as 6. I'm going to skip that one. I'll do 7 and I'll make that 8. And I'm going to skip that because I don't really care about anything over 10K generally. I'm not really worried about that. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So basically now I'm going to go to Cortex Control. Basically I dropped in an EQ block after the amp and cabs. Alright, so if I enable that, you can see all those 8 EQ curves that 8 EQ things that I adjusted. Let me see if I can make this screen bigger. I can make it a little bigger. All right, so I'm gonna leave it there. Try to think of the best way to do this. So kind of going back and forth between logic and that. Let me move this over here so I can kind of keep the same size window. All right, so the first one that I dealt with, basically if you click on it over to the right, it shows you what frequency that is. So this is like right around 50, right? So the first one that I dialed in was 50. So I added a low shelf for 50, and I basically set the Q. I left the Q alone, but then I basically cut it by about 8 dB. All right, and then my second reference point is going to be right here, and that was right around 246. I set my Q. Generally the Q for you just got to kind of mess with it. Obviously that's not like a steep, like this is more steep, then this is more round. So the lower the Q, the wider it's going to be, and the more frequencies it's going to cover. So if you look at where it starts and where it kind of ends, so if you think of it like a curve like this, you know it's going to be from around 200 to around close to 400 if you were to actually isolate this EQ curve right here. And then this one you can kind of tell is even wider, so it goes, so there's obviously a lot of overlap, but generally the way I try to look at it is, okay, I want to go from like 200 to 3 to 350 probably. So you go back here, and you can't see it now because once you start adding all these other EQ points in here, it kind of messes up your curve. But if I were to disable this one, for instance, which I think I can, how do I disable this? I'll do it over here. So if I disable this one, you can kind of see how the curve is. See, I'm gonna go ahead and disable all of them, and then I'll add them in as we go. So that's my first one. So you can see it's kind of like around 200 to, it kind of has that same shape. You can obviously adjust your Q. Like right now it's 1.9. And see, the higher I make it, the sharper, or the narrower the band. So generally I generally don't go any higher than like 2.5. But if you want, like, if you're trying to get real surgical and really hone in on a narrow band of EQ, then you want to make that Q higher. But generally between 1 and 2.5 is where I'll wind up. In this case, 1.9. All right, so then I add. So go to the next block, or next peak, and that's at 394. So basically, go back to here, and I just dialed in, I just put in 400. Same type of Q, and then I boosted it 5 dB. Now, if you look at it over here, it's closer to 10. But I find that you don't have to. I find that generally I kind of go in half. I do about half of what it says over here. It just seems to work for me. You can try boosting up to 10. You can get up to 12. But like this peak goes up to 15, so you can't even get up to 15. So I generally kind of treat this as I do about half of what the value is over here. So that, to me, this is like 5. That's 5. This would be closer to 10. That would be 5. This would be like 3, something like that. So we did the 400. Then next one I added was this one. Click on that. 720. I think I did 710. Yeah, 710. I did 2.3 on the Q. Boosted it 10 dB. Then I went to this one. and it's 1396. So I did 1426 for some reason. Yeah, so I must have clicked on it kind of closer over here. But you know, close enough. 1426. And then I did a Q of 3 because it's kind of not as wide. So it's kind of a narrower EQ curve, or EQQ. And then I cut it by 9 dB. And I think I ended up doing that because when you start adding other ones that are boosting, it pulls that one around, it pulls all the EQ around it up. So I boosted it, so I had to cut it even more to account for this next band that boosts it quite a bit. And you'll see that here on 6. So the next one, go to the next one here, 1848. I did 1822. Boosted it 6.6. All right. Go to my next one. So the next one, I did that one. So the next one is 9.8. Basically 10K. Oh, sorry. I skipped 4710. Oh yeah, that was this one. So 4710 was that one. This one is 9.6. That's 8. So that's this guy right here. I just did 9600. I cut it by 8.9. I'll show you kind of the difference that it made, and you'll be able to hear how much closer it is to the actual track. So with it disabled, so that's with it disabled. What am I doing? Let me go back here. With it enabled, so you can hear how much closer it is to the real track. So I'll go back to the actual track. And I'll isolate the guitar. And I'll let you hear, so this is before the EQ. And this is the actual track. So it's close, so you could see, like, as I was dialing this in, I was like, oh, that's pretty close. But then you apply that EQ curve, and it's crazy how much closer it is now. Now, so you can see how useful this is. All right, so once you get your EQ implemented, you're gonna turn that on. You're gonna go back to Logic. You're gonna re-record that same track again, as I did down here, and then you're gonna add your match EQ again. You're gonna follow those same steps. You're gonna drag your current, your reference, do the EQ curve, hit match, And so you can see after I applied the EQ, you see how much flatter it is now? It's still having to cut quite a bit of this 50, so I could make an adjustment on my EQ. Basically go here and basically cut it even more, lower this even more. So that'll help. I go back, but you can see how my mid-range is all fixed now. I've basically addressed, you know, if you go back to this track here and we compare, so this was the before I did the EQ and this is the after I did the EQ. So I did a pretty good job of addressing the mids. If I go here, where is this? So my 700 can still come down quite a bit. So I could go back here, find my 700. I need to boost it more because it's still trying to boost it. So I'll just boost it all the way up to 12. And that'll bring it down a little bit, you know, probably around here. This 1376, it's still having to cut. So if I go back here, 1376, it's gonna be this one. Cut it a little bit more, maybe around there. Still having to boost 1782 quite a bit. So I'm gonna boost this some more. Like that. I'm gonna leave these alone. I could probably cut it a little bit more. Let me go back here. Just cut that just a little bit more. We'll see if we can kind of get it a little closer. All right. So now I've got these three. So I'm gonna add another track. I'm gonna record. So I record that. I go to the track, add my match EQ, drag this guy into current, drag my stem into reference, click match, and now it's even a little closer. Yeah, so let's compare the last two. See. So yeah, so I got this one lowered a little bit. This one kind of was affected. Got that one a little bit lower. So to me, this makes me happy. So to me, this is good. And this is where I would stop. Now you can keep going. You can add another EQ, cut more, boost more, and get it looking completely flat. If you're really trying to dial in that album track, tracks of guitars are EQ'd in a way to fit into a mix, and they don't always sound great by themselves. So when you're playing by yourself, it may be like, I don't like that. Kind of like if you listen to Eddie Van Halen isolated guitar tracks, sometimes they don't sound so great, but in the track they sound massive, you know. So that's how you do that. I hope that made sense. Hope that's hope you find that useful. And I'm gonna work on this preset so I can get it uploaded and get my next artist preset series video going. And I'll try to do a version for the Nano Cortex too, so it should be fun. But anyway, wish me luck. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Thanks.